Hello, everybody. My name is Kenneth, and I've recently picked up this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So, for the late part of my teens and kind of early into my 20s, I really struggled with this anxiety of understanding what I want from my life. And for a while, it's really hard to pin down and solve this anxiousness that I was feeling. And so I started reading a couple of books about how to improve my life, how to make it better. And I stumbled across this book, which has probably been my favorite of the lot. So, just a little bit of a background story. When I first got into college, college was a really high pressure environment. Everyone around you is working really, really hard to kind of achieve their goals and propel themselves into careers that really make them happy and fulfilled, and obviously find financial success. But the issue is that there's so much information and everyone cares about every little thing. It feels like you're worried about making someone angry, making someone mad, or you're worried about making your friends happy or your family happy, and you're choosing career paths not based on what you value but what your environment values. And I realized I started to care about values that have no pertinence to me. Like, I just did not care about them. But because I was kind of forced to care about them because of the environment that I was in, it was causing me a great deal of anxiety. I started to care about what other people cared about, not what I cared about. And so Mark Manson, the author of this book, really gives us a lot of wisdom when it comes to tackling these challenging problems in our lives, of figuring out what we want. So, in this first chapter, Mark Manson introduces this idea of don't try. Like, stop trying to be happy, stop trying to be positive. And here, he says that the desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is in of itself a positive experience. So this is kind of that idea where it's like, how can you be happy if you don't accept all situations that you're in? Because if you're a person that constantly thinks about how much better your life could be, that means that your life right now in this moment is not good. And that is a terrible thing to think about, because you'll never be happy if you think that way. So that's the first idea of this first chapter, is that you need to stop trying to be happy. It is not a good thing for you. Now, we don't always get to decide the way that we feel or the way that we think, but this is kind of that first step into understanding that we need to accept the way that things are and not deny our reality. Like, we need to choose moments in our lives to care about happiness, to care about what we want. But we can't have every moment be like that. We need to stop trying. And in the second chapter, titled Happiness is a Problem, Mark Manson explains that happiness is a ghost. It is simply an emotion that we experience along with every other emotion that we experience. Anger, sadness, grief, all these different types of emotions that we experience. Happiness is just one of them. And that's when it becomes the issue, is the fact that in our society today, we always think to ourselves we should be happy all the time. But that's never the case. We suffer and we struggle. And these are just normal parts of everybody's lives, but online, all we see in media is that we should be happy all the time, and that's simply not true. In fact, our lives are roller coasters, and happiness is simply a part of the roller coaster of our lives. And we need to accept that. We need to accept that these ups and downs are simply moments in our lives, and that happiness is never constant. Otherwise, what's the point of being happy if you don't know what sadness is? And Mark Manson says that you need to stop chasing emotional gratification, because then you'll never be happy. And this kind of relates back to that thing. It's like, stop trying to chase emotion. Like, don't try. It's not worth it. Like chasing happiness is not a value that someone should have. It's not something that should be important to you, chasing happiness. And so we get to this third chapter called You're Not Special, or You Are Not Special. And he kind of says this in the way that, like, you don't deserve anything. Like, you don't really deserve to be happy. You don't deserve to be sad. You just are. And people just are. And some people, Mark Manson says, say, well, if I'm not constantly happy, or if I'm not excellent or extraordinary, then what's the point of my life? And the reality of the situation is that actually most people are very average, like including us, including you. Like, we are just average people. Very, very, very small amount of people, probably count them on both hands, that are exceptional. And just because we see the best of everyone's lives all the time, we might feel insecure about ourselves, but in reality, people only like to present themselves like that. Like, for example, a businessman that works 80-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks might be very financially successful, but he might have gone through 3 divorces and have 8 different kids with those 3 different divorces. Like, no one can have it all. We all have the same amount of time on this earth. We all need to sleep 8 hours a day, and we're only awake for 16 hours a day. Like, we need to choose what we do with our time. And there's this idea that being average is synonymous with failure, but in reality, almost everybody's average in one way or another. But you don't see that because people just like to jerk off their egos. So we need to get over ourselves, and we need to accept the fact that we are flawed human beings, and that life is not some sort of test or some type of exam that we always have to be right and be happy and be successful. It's just we just are, and I am just am. That's just it. And there's this one more idea in this chapter that I wanted to bring to you, and it's that idea that you don't deserve special treatment. Like, you are not entitled to anything. And this idea of being a victim to your environment just does not exist. Like there's only really 2 ways of thinking about that. Either you are better than everybody, so you deserve special treatment. Example 1. Or example 2 is that you are somehow inferior to everyone else, and that's why you deserve special treatment. And those are just complexes that you have to get over. Like, Mark Manson says this over and over again in the book, where it's like, you are not special. Like, if you think you are special, you will only be disappointed in finding out that you're not special. So stop trying to be so extraordinary. That's just not how it is. Like, we need to accept our reality. And that's kind of the big point of this chapter in the book, in reality, is that we are just not special people. And you might be like, what's the point of life if we can't decide the type of people that we are? And Mark Manson addresses this in a future chapter. But before I move on to that future chapter, there's one in between that he talks about. And he talks about the value of suffering, and this idea that a large part of the happiness in our lives comes from absolving or resolving our points of suffering or points of pain. So we need to understand, like, what drives certain emotions in us. It's things like emotion, like anger, sadness, happiness, and then figure out why we feel these emotions. And then we need to measure how much we care about how we feel about these things that have happened to us, or these things that we choose to do. And then we need to determine its value for ourselves and if it's important to us or not, so that we can give a fuck about it. We can choose if we give a fuck about it, or if we choose to ignore it completely, and that's not going to be our problem. So we need to determine our values. We need to understand, like, do we care about money? Do we care about spending time with our loved ones? Do we care about the career that we have, the things that we leave on this earth? We need to choose things to give fucks about, the good things. And this idea that we can choose every good thing in the world and apply that to ourselves just doesn't exist. Like I said before, it's the tyranny of exceptionalism. You can't have it all. That's impossible. So we need to pick and choose our struggles, and we need to find our value through suffering. Like when we struggle through college, or we choose a major that we don't like, that's suffering. And when you choose a major or a career and you're working a job you don't like, you understand to yourself, it's like, I'm suffering, I need to fix this. I need to change my career, I need to change my major. And that's why Mark Manson brings up this chapter, is that we need to choose. So this next chapter is titled, You Are Always Choosing. And it's this idea that everything in our lives that happens is really a choice. Now, we don't always get to choose what happens to us or what happens to the people around us, but we get to choose how we react to these things that do happen to us. And he brings up this girl named Malala, and it was a woman who was protesting about women's rights in Muslim countries, in Pakistan. And she was saying, how dare the Taliban take away my right for education. And at the age of 14, she was shot in the face when she was riding a bus home from school. And a masked Taliban soldier was like, who is Malala? Tell me or I will shoot everyone here on the bus. Malala identified herself, and then the man shot her in the head in front of all the other passengers. Malala went to a coma and almost died, and the Taliban publicly stated that if she somehow survived the murder attempt, that they would kill both her and her father. And today, Malala is still alive, and she still speaks out against violence and oppression towards women in Muslim countries. Now is a best-selling author. In 2014, she achieved a Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts. She received one. And there's two different types of choices that Malala could have made after she was threatened. She could have just been quiet, lived out the rest of her life in silence after she got shot, and stayed safe, been scared and traumatized obviously by the incident, but she chose to use what happened to her as her power so that she could do more for women's rights in Muslim countries. And if that happened to you, or if it happened to me, I definitely don't think I would have had the courage to use what getting shot in the face as a powerful tool for spreading my voice. And that's what Mark Manson says when he says that, hey, like, you do have a choice. It's like, you can either turn things into a painful experience or a powerful experience, and the choice that you make is your fault. It is your choice, and you do have a decision-making power when it comes to these types of things. And it's this idea that we can't control what happens to us. That's what makes us unhappy. And so we need to understand that everything in our life is a choice. And that's what Mark Manson says. And that, he says, is the path to living a better life, a good life. It's the idea that we do have responsibility over our own lives, and that we are not just a leaf floating in the wind, that we are sentient beings and that we have a decision to make. Oops. Mark Manson also continues to explain that choosing is actually really simple. Decisions in your life is really simple, but they're simply just not easy, right? It's like, it's really easy to decide between going to the gym 30 minutes a day and losing weight versus going home and eat McDonald's. Like, obviously there's a better decision, but it's simply just not an easy decision. It's much harder to go to the gym than it is to eat McDonald's. That's what he says. It's like, we have to be responsible for the choices that we make. Like, we might not get to decide everything, but we are certainly responsible for the things that we do choose, and the things that, and who we are and what we do. We have responsibility for that. And this idea that you don't deserve, or you deserve something more, or you deserve special treatment because something happened to you, or your genetics are bad. It's like, that's just victimhood. You're just victimizing yourself for no reason. Like no one's gonna help you. You need to make these decisions on your own and decide the type of person that you want to be. Okay, so this next chapter is you are wrong about everything, and so am I. The main idea of this chapter that I got, at least, is that being wrong is simply an opportunity for growth, and we need to stop this idea of thinking about finding ourselves. Like, we just will simply never know who we are, and that's a thing that can make us happy or better, is that we will be wrong, but like the rewards of knowing or are very little, right? Like understanding ourselves is important, but it's more about understanding what we value is important. And we need to stop avoiding like pain of being wrong so that we can achieve like the rewards of being right. And it's kind of switching that mindset of what if we're wrong to what if we're right about the things that we value. And that will propel ourselves forward. It's this idea that we will certainly mess up, but when we learn something new, we don't get like something wrong to right, we just get something more right or slightly less wrong than before. And that being wrong is really an opportunity for growth. And the chapter after that is failure is the way forward, and there's this idea that you either fail or succeed. But the reality of the situation is that we don't really fail or succeed. We just, right, from the last chapter, we just go from a little bit from failing to a little bit less failing, right? It's like, it's really hard to get a perfect score on a test, every single test that you've ever taken in your lives. In fact, I don't think there's one person that I know that's gotten an A in every single project or assignment that he's ever done or she's ever done in their lives. And so we just need to like kind of apply that same logic to everything in our lives. It's like we are not perfect. And failing is how we understand that, right? It's like when we suffer or we do something wrong, like for example, this video I've been recording, I've messed up the audio like 3 times, but this is my 4th time recording. And now I understand, hey, make sure to monitor your audio before you start recording. So, you know, failure is the way forward, and like just because you feel a certain way, that's just not how things are all the time. Like human beings are really good at tricking themselves. We should stop trying to trick ourselves into feeling good things. The chapter after failure is the way forward is the importance of saying no. And the importance of saying no is really just kind of understand that, like, hey, here's an example. Let me give you an example. Like, every day you wake up and you kind of have like a bucket list of values, right? And if someone asks you to do something that's not in the realm of what you value as a human being, just say no so that you can focus on things that are actually important to you. And that's the big idea of this chapter. And the chapter after that is, and then we die. Like Steve Jobs said, right? Like, all fear falls away in the face of death. And it's the same thing that Mark Manson is saying. It's like, what are we so scared of to not go out there and just do things that we care about and just say fuck you to all the other things that we don't care about? Because we're all gonna die one day. No one will remember you. So fuck it and just go and do something about your life. Like, you need to understand that no one really cares what you're doing at the end of the day. They might care now, they might judge you now, but when you're 80 and you're on your deathbed, you should then decide, like, hey, these are the things that I value. Like, I lived a good life. And that's what, at the end, we all die is really portraying us. Like, fuck it, go for it. Like we are going to die one day, and nothing else matters except for the things that you have chosen. It's about finding meaning in your life, not about finding what is the meaning of your life. It's about finding meaning. And so this book was a great book. There's a lot of things that I left out from this book that I would recommend you checking it out for yourself. I would like to end by saying kind of like, you know, at the end of the day, anxiety is a good thing, but only in like controlled amounts, obviously. Go read this book. I would rate it 10 out of 10. It's helped me a lot in navigating challenging things in my life. And I hoped by watching this video, you have gotten help with something that you needed help with in this life. Make sure you like the video and subscribe if you like to see more types of videos like this. Leave me a comment. I haven't made that many videos yet, so I would like to understand that, okay, is the video quality good? Is the audio quality good? Let me know what's going on, and that's kind of all for me. I hope you have a great day. Peace out. Bye bye.